India stands at the center of one of the most complex energy transitions in the modern history. We are the world's fastest growing economy, the third largest energy consumer, and the nation balancing development, energy security, and geopolitics all at once. But behind every policy, every reform, every megawatt added to the grid, there are decisions, and behind those decisions, there are people. Thank you for signing in with Enersider today, where we go beyond headlines and into the minds of people shaping India's energy future. I am Siddharth Gautam, and today we are joined by someone who has seen India's governance ecosystem from the inside. As a former IAS, a global policy expert, and now the president of Chintan Research Foundation, Shishir Priyadarshi. Shishir, thank you so much for being here today. It is our honor to have you, and out of your busy schedule, we totally understand that driving back from South Delhi to Noida in a peak hour, I know how difficult it can be. Shishir, you are a graduate from St. Stephen's. You did MSc in nuclear physics, also from Delhi University. You have given 25 years at World Trade Organization, 17 years of Indian Administrative Service, and now a leading think tank, CRF. That's an impeccable background to say. Take us back in time and tell us about how it all started. And was there a moment in the past when you realized, okay, this is the kind of work I'll be doing in future?
Siddharth, such a pleasure to be here, genuine pleasure. And yes, it is some distance, but once you come to this wonderful studio of yours, then the driving distance seems very much worth the while. Yes, it's been a phenomenal journey. God's been very, very kind. And when I do reflect back, and yes, I do occasionally do reflect back, I often think that it's been made up of, at times, conscious decisions, and at times coincidental and incidental nudges from someone far above us who guides our fate. I had just kind of graduated from Doon School, and was very proudly one of the toppers of school. And the natural thing at that time was sit for the IITs, which was the buzzword then.
Right.
And I sat for the IITs and I got in. And there were no coaching camps. It was just you studied a bit more and you got it. And I joined Delhi IIT. I even remember I joined the Aravali hostel. Wonderful 15 days of ragging.
Wow.
And then somewhere down, and that's, I'm mentioning this only because of how life takes its own changes. The family or the elders in the family thought, no. You got to join the civil service, and you can't do it as an engineer. The new system when engineering subjects could be taken as part of the civil service hadn't started then. So I suddenly get this letter, telephone calls weren't on. I get a letter that, and I did have a place in St. Stephen's then already, which we hadn't given up. He says, no, give up IIT and go and join St. Stephen's and do physics. And I still remember, and my children can't believe it, that didn't you question them? Didn't you ask why? I said, no, they knew, and then I was 17 years old. So I went off to do physics, loved the subject. I genuinely loved physics, and I think there was a point in my life I really wanted to carry on being a physicist. But I think periodically I would be reminded, you gave up IIT, or you asked to give up IIT to become a civil servant. So the minute MSc finished, promptly, like practically half my class, I sat for the UPSC exam. Well, again, God's grace, got it.
Wonderful.
And that's when the journey of the IAS started. But now I must talk about some coincidences or some, guided factors by others. I had been district magistrate for Dehradun for about 3 years. And as a DM, you try and do a lot, but you also actually make far more promises in terms of infrastructure, in terms of schools, in terms of health, than you can actually deliver. And which is why I think even in the British civil service, you were posted out of a place after every 2.5 years.
Correct.
But for whatever reason, I was not getting posted out. I was there, 3 years were coming. And then I realized the only way I could get out at that time was to ask for some leave to study. And that's what led to my requesting for leave and then ending up doing a second master's in developmental economics from UK. Loved it at that time, but it was more fun at that time because you were living abroad, you could see a bit of the world. Little realizing at that point of time, Siddharth, that that's what finally led me to join the WTO. I mean, I don't think my degree in physics. I mean, I applied for a vacancy in the WTO.
Correct.
But the vacancy did require a degree in political science or economics or law, and I did have a degree in economics. And
so you were there at the right place at the right time.
Possibly. And as I said, I don't think I was as far-sighted as someone sitting, thousands of miles above me who probably was far more far-sighted in guiding me. Yeah, sure. But initially at the WTO, I was representing India.
Right.
So I spent about 3.5 years representing India, enjoyed the work beautifully, wanted to stay longer. The children were studying there, more global opportunities were open for them. And so then that's when I decided to, as they say, shift over the fence. So I resigned from the civil service and joined the international civil service.
Right. Excellent background. I also am very, very sure of that only a few percent people in our country would have got that sort of merit or the success. We have seen so many people working so hard. Of course, you're right when you say that it's of course God's grace.
Sure.
And certainly the hard work that must have gone behind what is now coming out very casually from your mouth. But I'm sure I also feel right people are always at the right places. So kudos to that, in terms of the overall successful journey that you've had so far.
Well, Siddharth, thank you so much. No, I think we are on the same page about, of being grateful for what we have. I do at times feel, especially let's say in the context of the IAS, where, quite a few 100,000 sit and about 100 odd people are selected, that was I the most hardworking, or was I amongst, in them the most intelligent? And I feel certainly not. It's a large number of very hardworking and very, intelligent people, but only 100 of the lucky ones get selected. So, God's blessings.
Correct.
And the good wishes of elders.
Absolutely.
Two things essential.
Absolutely. Shishir, is there any unexpected conversation around that time that influenced your thinking towards, driving more and more into the academics and the beautiful career that you created afterwards? But any that conversation that from the past you could bring out on the table today?
I can certainly tell you at least two conversations which I think have had a fair impact on me. Not necessarily in career terms, but I'm sure somewhere in career terms also. One wasn't a real conversation, but it had a deep impact. I think I was about 11 years or maybe 12 years old in the boarding school, as I said, in Dehradun, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister, was coming to school, and she had given, I think, about 45 minutes for a question and answer session with the boys. Now, trust me, all these things are completely curated, and the 6-7 boys had been picked up to ask questions, and I wasn't one of them because I was so camera shy, so stage shy. I was not one of them.
Okay.
But a question that she was asked, the answer of which remained in my, always today remains in my memory. She was asked that, how do you accomplish so much in a day? And she said, yes, I sleep very little, but the hours that I'm awake, I'm usually, most of the time, doing two things at a time. In the context, the word multitasking wasn't used those days, but she said, and then she smilingly added, I'm still trying to perfect the possibility of doing a third simultaneous task. I think it struck to me what really struck to me was that never in life should one say, I do not have time to do something.
Correct.
You really want to do something, you can certainly find time to do it. So that's a very, very, I don't know, I said I'm not part of a conversation, but it happened in front of me and it remained with me.
I mean, yes, of course, there are these examples sometimes which we relate to, and then we try and aspire and work towards it, and we come out more as a stronger person or as a stronger human being. Thank you so much for that. Shishir, I'll move on to a slightly serious question.
Sure.
We, of course, heard from you about your past background in terms of how it all started. India is sitting at a critical inflection point where we are balancing many things.
Sure.
Energy security is one, affordability is another one. We as a nation are also expanding in infrastructure, and then we also have our geopolitical realities in front of us. All of this happening simultaneously.
Sure.
And given your experience about governance, global policy, institutional leadership now, let me put to you in a hypothetical yet serious position. If you were in a position of power today, what is the first decision you would make?
Siddharth, let me start with, before coming to the question that you put at the end, let me start today about the fact that India being in an inflection point, at a very, very important point on its geographic, political and economic history. It's certainly true. It's not as if, the country has not been at inflection points earlier. There have been many points at which point that generation had felt that this is a very, very tough time. But with the wisdom of history behind us, certainly these are extremely difficult, challenging times. And allow me to elaborate.
Yes, please.
You look at three things that I mentioned, and then perhaps let's look at the difficulties in all three. Economics, let's say the economy. Now, we certainly have set ourselves a very important target of becoming a developed economy by 2047. Very it's a very credible target that we've set, very important target we've set.
But is it because we're completing 100 years in 2047 and therefore we...
Certainly, it is because we are completing 100 years, and there's a feeling that, 100 years is a long enough period to have achieved the developed country status, and that's why we must do it by 2047. But now if you start breaking it into smaller parts, that means achieving a per capita income of about $14,000 to $15,000 per capita, of a power requirement which could easily go up from about 470, 480 gigawatts that we have in terms of the productive capacity right now, to about 5 times this, to about 2,500 gigawatts, and we can talk about that, how much it will entail, to a population that's already become the biggest in the world and can only grow more, to levels of poverty that we are certainly addressing. But as the global prices rise and as the purchase power parity varies, it's a continuous fight.
Absolutely.
You look at climate changes, the stress of climate, you look at all the equity factors that you mentioned, just transition, equitable energy availability, etc. These are difficult times. Now you combine it with the global political scenario, which suddenly makes these tough times extremely difficult, or even more difficult.
And that's why we have people like you.
Well, I wish that's why we probably have important presidents in important countries taking decisions which impact the world.
Right.
But the fact is, and I say this perhaps much more with my WTO experience, I stayed there so long, that what was the basic tenet of an organization like the WTO? It was completely built on the foundation of comparative advantage, that a country should produce what it can do best, what it can do most efficiently, what it can do cheaply, and export that and import the rest. But there was an underlying tenet also that the more you become entrenched as an integrated part of a global economy, the more likely there would be peace. GATT was set up immediately after the Second World War, and you felt that the linkages which would come about because of trade would help secure peace. But those very tenets are today being strongly challenged, that we do not want strategic autonomy, that we would rather weaponize interdependence, meaning thereby that, or weaponize independence.
Correct.
I mean, we'd rather have people in camps. You are with me or you're not with me. The very important foreign policy that India has followed, I would say, very successfully over the last many decades, one of strategic autonomy, that we could be friends with two countries who may not be that friendly with each other, is being strongly challenged.
Correct.
The multilateral order is being challenged. The rules-bound system is being challenged. Why? Because the countries which had set it up then had clearly brought in, there was a certain degree of equitableness and non-equity in it. You look at the Security Council, that's one example of where things were not equitable. But you look at other parts of it, look at the consensus-based decision-making in WTO. It was the most equitable thing.
Right.
But the bigger countries today probably want to reset the buttons on the equitable thing and saying that we'd rather sit across the table, do a bit of arm wrestling, and then see, what emerges on paper. And obviously they're going to win. These are big. This is the second. But the third is this whole evolving climate that we are living in. You look at the most amazing, rapid technological changes happening. Look at AI. It's going to certainly completely turn our life over. You and I sitting here could well be doing things which doesn't at all require us to be here.
Right.
I mean, truthfully, yes. Now, if you combine that with how technology also, rather than being a national asset, is going to become looked as a strategic power, and you could certainly have weaponization of technology. You could certainly have the weaponization of anything critical, not just critical minerals, anything critical. Now, it's a very, very tough time. In this context, and I've only made your question more difficult for me, but I'll try and answer it only.
Coming back to the, yes.
I'm trying to answer it only I've made it more difficult, I know. But look, if there are, it wouldn't be one.
Okay.
What I would really want is, we simply do not take our foot off the reform accelerator. Okay. Our country may have done very well in the context of the ease of doing business. We've got to do much more. We've got to equally focus on the cost of doing business. A third point, very strongly, you've really got to facilitate private sector participation in every aspect of nation building.
Correct.
You look around, countries only where the private sector has really contributed to growth. In our country, still parts of private sector is still looked at with suspicion. Oh, you're making money.
Right.
You're making money for the country. You're making money for growth. You're making money for employment. You're making money for taxes. Correct. So I think that is a mindset that needs. But the most important thing is, we've got to be somehow, and it's not a decision, it's more a mindset. We've got to be extremely nimble and flexible in the way today foreign policy evolves from day-to-day basis, especially since foreign policy today trumps domestic policy, and I don't mean as a cliche.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that insightful answer. Of course, it covered your angle on the trade organization, your experience at WTO, and the geopolitical side of things as well. Not particularly talking about the energy sector, but sure. Yes, I'm sure you covered all the elements here. All right, Shishir, we've got another question for you. You've worn many hats. You've worked as a civil servant for many years. You've worked internationally for WTO for the longest, and then a stint in the private for a while, and then you've completely 180-degree turned towards a think tank. Which is your favorite hat, and what is, for our viewers, what is something that we can learn from it? If you could just take us through it.
Sure. Siddharth, yes, I also wonder sometimes, even the longest format of cricket, a test match has only 4 innings, and two teams are supposed to separately do the 2 innings. With me individually now seem to be into my 4th innings. So maybe sooner or later I do need to hang up my, my cricketing boots. But when I look back, Siddharth, I think what's really helped is the fact, and I say this seriously, and I say it with conviction, that whenever I am wearing a particular hat, God's been so kind that I've genuinely thought of it as the only hat I wanted to ever wear. When I was with the civil service, I felt then, and I still feel now, amazing service to be in, the potential of what you can do for people whose lives you can actually touch. The impact is amazing. Whether you are at the policy making level, at the sub-federal or federal level, again, the impact is huge. And I thought that was the best possible hat. You take the next phase, which is the international bureaucracy, and suddenly you felt that a global playing field, which was not necessarily even, you could do a little bit to make that more even. The rules were certainly skewed against developing countries. And I very soon became director of the development division, where the mandate was to ensure that developing countries got out of it. And I really thought that hat was an unbelievable God-given opportunity to try not only to gain from that experience, but whatever little one could do to divert global funds, to open their eyes to both the opportunities and challenges. I really enjoyed that. Yes, there was a brief period, as you said, in the private sector too. Unbelievable, nimbleness of decision making. But it also made me realize that some of the, as a civil servant and as a bureaucracy, and then later as an international civil servant, that some of those things also were phenomenally good. But obviously, India's private sector is unbelievable. And now much more to the Chintan Research Foundation, a think tank that was set up about a year ago. It was thought of about a year and a half ago, but we are just about completing the year of its existence. And I think, the ability to turn, I would say, uncomfortable discussions into difficult questions through reflection is what Chintan wants to do in the public policy space, and I really think this is the best possible hat. So yes, I've been fortunate that at every point of my life I've thought each had to be both unique and wonderful.
As I thought that this is coming. Wonderful. Just to cut it in between and bring you back towards the energy part of it. What is the one hard truth about India's energy transition that nobody else is talking about? And I'm asking you, it's also because you have a vertical in energy under CRF. So what's your take on that?
Look, I think where in this period that we've been looking at energy transition, I find the conversation somewhat skewed towards 2070 and the country's zero net emission targets. The uncomfortable truth that many people, or very few, are talking about is the fact that there is a big clash between this target and our goal of becoming a developed nation by 2047, because the latter requires us to at least quadruple our existing energy productive capacity. Now, if you're going to increase that by 4 times or maybe even 5 times, not all of it is going to come by non-fossil fuel.
Correct.
And I don't think enough conversation is happening about the fact that we must amalgate. We must not throw it away as a bad thing. I mean, there's amazing reserves of coal. Now, simply saying coal is bad, coal is terrible, coal's got to be done away with, I think that conversation in the context of energy transition is not happening. But another conversation that I think is beginning to take place, this whole concept of just and equitable transition. I had, I would say, the fortune of visiting one coal mine, and I must say it wasn't coal mine going inside, but it was, in this radius, I must say, of easily 60 to 70 kilometers, of this huge and a large number of people entirely dependent on it. And if you look at the secondary impact of employment generation and income generation, it's huge. Now, sure, we do need to look at the environment, certainly. We do need to preserve the planet for the next generation, as they say. But I think the conversations that is not happening is we cannot do that at the cost of the developmental aspirations of the present generation.
Correct.
That's absolutely essential, and I think not enough is being talked about that in the context of energy transition.
Understood. So you clearly see there is a gap,
Yes.
right? And as a country, don't you think India is not asking these questions, not bringing this out in the form of conversations or dialogues? We often visit all sort of platforms where we talk about energy transition, and this is how the private sector would work, right?
Sure.
Everybody would talk their own story. Some of them will talk the real struggles. Some of them will have a different side of view to present. But don't you think this is one question which as a nation we are not asking enough?
You are absolutely right, Siddharth. I sometimes feel that world over, they think that once size can fit all in terms of energy transition, or something that may have worked. Let's take, I think easy to take that example. Let's take the example of UK. Very proudly, they say that they have shut all their thermal power plants. It's put into our face very strongly that the UK has shut its thermal power plants. Why doesn't India follow suit? Now, look at the figures we are talking about. The entire energy demand of the United Kingdom is about 100 gigawatts.
Correct.
Our projected demand is about 2,200 gigawatts, number one. When did they set up their first power plant? About at least 70-80 years before our first power plant came up. Now, how can you expect exactly what may have worked for them to work for us?
Absolutely.
So, as a nation, I think, and that is certainly, I must tell you, Siddharth, is a very important part of the work we are doing on climate change and energy transition at the Chintan Research Foundation, and that is to present a global south perspective of these issues, where a lot of the global south countries are struggling with the pressures of the Western world.
Correct.
To have zero net emissions, to have your CDCs, but without realizing that we have strong developmental aspirations. So while India may be looking at solutions, we are looking at coal gasification, we are looking at green hydrogen, we are looking at a lot of things.
Right.
But are we asking or pushing back on those difficult points globally? Perhaps not as much as we should. And I think that is why CRF's work on energy transition with a global south perspective assumes a lot of importance and significance.
Perfect. So if you have to bet on one energy theme for the next decade, what do you think that is going to be?
Look, given the fact that the country's thrust and focus on renewable energy is going to only increase, and rightfully so. Given also the fact that no renewable energy is 24-hour variant.
Correct.
So we will certainly have to have very, very important energy storage solutions. So if I had to bet, I would certainly put energy storage as one. Allow me to add one more thing to it, and that also as a sports analogy. I also don't think we are giving as much attention as we should to transmission and evacuation. Sometimes I feel it's like being, what I'm equating the transmission and evacuation part of our energy story is very often being like the goalkeeper in a football or a hockey match. What are the scenes or the players that you remember most? Are the ones who scores the goals.
Absolutely.
The ones who save the goals are very often, not in the limelight, and yet they are instrumental in your victory. And I think exactly in that way, our transmission lines, our evacuation, our distribution systems are those silent goalkeepers whose presence need to be acknowledged and strengthened, and certainly that will be required.
Shishir, interesting session which is called Enersider Power Round.
Okay.
We are going to ask you simple questions. We expect quirky responses, sharp responses. These are the simple rules for this session. I'll start with this and that, this or that. Reform or revolution?
Oh, certainly reform. Revolutions, I think, create noise. Reforms stay on for longer.
Perfect. PSUs or private, who executes it better?
I think private sector certainly executes better. Probably the stabilization comes from PSUs. But what is the worst thing which we often do is wanting both to do the same thing.
That's a great answer. One book every aspiring leader must read, and why?
I would actually say one book a week because that's the only time aspiring leaders will think.
Perfect.
But I would say the story of a yogi certainly gives you a very, very important reflection and how your life must be dedicated to others.
Okay. Last question for this round. If not IAS, what alternate life would we have seen you in?
Well, certainly, I think I would have been a teacher or a professor. It remains a huge passion. I love writing. Sometimes I'm told at home I can write with my eyes closed. Some bits I can, but no, I think I've been a teacher. I've been a professor. I've been very happy with being one.
Excellent. So you're in the right profession now.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move on to another question focused on the CRF and how it all formed. Of course, we have a feeling that institutions and think tanks are ultimately built around a larger purpose. For me, they are not just platforms, but they are definitely the vehicles of long-term change. And hence, we would like to know, what is Chintan Research Foundation truly working towards?
Okay. Look, in a way, you've already talked about three things. You may not have realized it in your question, which actually leads to institutions like CRF. You've got to have an individual. The individual has to have an idea, and that idea needs to be transformed into an institution. In this case, I think it was Mr. Gautam who had, as an individual, this idea of setting up a think tank. And I was entrusted with the responsibility of converting that idea into an institution. Now, when you set about making an institution, the most important thing is to look back or to look at it from a distance and say, what value would it add? Right. In every sphere, including in the sphere of think tanks, there are many institutions. You must add value. That's the whole point. I mean, it is a national resource going into setting it up. And that is why when we set up CRF, and after a lot of deliberation, we not only chose verticals, but we decided that we would pick such an aspect in that vertical that we thought not enough work was being done on. So, when we looked at climate change and energy transition, the feeling was that the voice of the Global South, the concerns of the Global South are not being adequately reflected. This conflict between development and developmental aspirations vis-a-vis your zero net emissions was not being adequately talked of. So we wanted to push that.
Okay.
Our second vertical was global economy and trade. And here we felt the Indian industry's voice was really not being taken into account in a large number of decisions that government would take in negotiations. So we wanted to push the industry voice. And the third was the geopolitical dimension, where again we felt that a lot of the global geography was not being adequately covered. Everyone wanted to look at neighbors, everyone wants to look at Europe and the US. Yeah. But, the world is much more than just these 2 or 3 areas. Okay. So, Chintan, CRF, was specifically looking at areas where we think we can add value to the debate.
Correct. So when let's say we see CRF succeeds massively down the years, what changes you think it is going to bring in our country?
Look, I think, the country has a huge momentum of its own, and entities like CRF can perhaps add a bit of value to the discourse. I think it will be slightly premature or over-exaggeration even in our minds if we thought that we would make some major change to the country. But if we can make even the slightest of difference in projecting a positive national narrative globally, and if we can make even the smallest of difference in the public policy space, so that the policies that the government is implementing and drafting have an even more pro-development impact, we would feel we've done our job.
That's great to know. And of course, as Enersider, we'll be happy to be associated with CRF whenever needed. That brings me to the last question for today's episode, today's podcast. And just your thought on this. If future generations are watching this or listening to this podcast, what is the one takeaway you want them to go with?
You do keep the toughest question for the last. Look, I don't even know what the future generation of the world would look like. But look, one thing I certainly would like, and we're going to put our actions into these words that I'm going to tell with you or share with you. We would very much hope that in time to come, when people look back at CRF and what we've done, they would feel, yes, that they did not hesitate to ask uncomfortable questions. We are not here to merely look at any issue the way it's being looked at. We would certainly question government, we would certainly question public policy, we would certainly question the private sector, we would certainly question other countries' policies towards us. We would not hesitate to ask the difficult questions, because I think the right answers are often born out of difficult questions.
Absolutely. And we wish you all the good luck for the journey that you've started with CRF. And as I said, the nation is already proud because you have taken the path, which is not an easy path, of course. A lot that goes behind in terms of bringing the right voices out, the kind of research that you delve into. So all the very best for that. And thank you so much for coming to the show, and we look forward to working with CRF in the times to come.
Such a pleasure, and trust me, working with Enersider would be equally and a mutually satisfying journey for us too.
Thank you so much.